What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a special edition of the Jaguars Fan Battle Podcast, a member of the Fan Battle Sports Network. I am one of your hosts, Matthew G., joined by Cody Cold. What's up, man?
What's going on, everybody?
Another day, another dollar, right? And of course, today, our special guest, Scott Yager. Appreciate you taking time out of your day, man. It really means a lot to us.
How are you guys? Thanks for having me.
Another day, man. Just a little intro. Scott Yager, the most important thing you need to know about him is he's a Syracuse alum, and that's why we brought him on. And that's the end of it. No, I'm just kidding. If you go to his Twitter, you'll see, or I guess X, formerly known as Twitter. He's a TV guy, writer, wrestling fan. He's a voiceover actor. We'll have to get into that a little bit. But the biggest thing is he's the host of ChallengeMania podcast with Derek MTV. And you can find his handle is Shot of Yager on Twitter.
That's a dope name.
Yeah. So welcome, man.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, it's funny joke about the Cuse thing. I'm actually driving up to Syracuse tomorrow, so I'll be going up there for a couple days this week.
For a game?
Well, I am going to go to the game tomorrow night, but I'm going not to toot my own horn, but I was selected to be one of the first recipients of this Q's 50 Entrepreneurship Award. It's like the 50 fastest growing businesses by Syracuse alumni, and ChallengeMania, I guess, is one of those businesses. So kind of surreal, but so I'm going up for that.
You know who else is a Syracuse alumni? Andre Cisco.
Yeah. No, a lot. I mean, look, Q's football, for as up and down of a program as Q's football has been, still consistently pumps the league with quality players. So, I'm proud of our. Right now, we're kind of having another down year, but last year we had a pretty exciting year. But Q's has always been like ever since I went there, that we really haven't had like a great football period. But like we have bred some really great NFL pros, Arthur Jones, Chandler Jones, and people like that. And then before that, like when I was in high school, Marvin Harrison and Donovan McNabb and things like that. But yeah, more of a basketball school for sure. So I'm going to go check out the game. And then ironically, we play here I live in New York City. We play at Yankee Stadium on Saturday. I don't know that I'm going to go to that, but the football team plays here. So
who are they playing?
We play Pittsburgh, which at first I thought we would win, but now we're just losing every game now. So it's you know what? I went to a game there last year. We play this. Sometimes we play in this thing called the Pinstripe Bowl. There's nothing worse than going to a football game at a baseball stadium.
It's weird.
Really awkward.
The seating would be weird.
Yeah, there's like really no good sight lines, and like you feel like I got a good seat because it's the 50-yard line, but like the way it works is you're like further from the field. It's a mess. So probably gonna skip it. But yeah, thanks for having me. All those things on my Twitter bio are correct. Happy to talk some Jags with you guys. Great week to be doing that, by the way.
Yeah.
So for those people that aren't aware, what is the challenge? Just so they,
Oh, well, so I always say, because like people will say to me all the time, they're like, "Oh, well, check out your podcast." They're like, "Oh, I'll check out the show," and whatnot. Our show, Challenge Mania, is sort of like what you guys are for the Jags, right? I would imagine you don't get a lot of random Steeler fans who just decide to tune into your show, right? Because it doesn't interest them. If the challenge doesn't interest you, no need to look it up and check it out just to humor me. But if you do like the challenge on MTV, which airs on Wednesday nights, they're going into their 40th season next year. They're on their 39th season now. It's been on since late, I want to say 98 was maybe the first one. It is what most people used to call the Real World Road Rules Challenge. It started as a competition show that was like a second life for people who were on either Real World or Road Rules, which when I was growing up were kind of two of the only really the reality shows out there until shows like Survivor and Big Brother and other competition shows came about. And then somewhere in the mid 2000s, they sliced off the Real World Road Rules name. They just call it The Challenge. Me and my co-host, who's a guy who's been on the challenge about 13, 14 times. He's won it 3 times. His name's Derek Kaczynski. He's a Chicago guy. Now he lives in West Virginia. We're like a companion show for the challenge. We interview the cast members. We break down the episodes. We do live shows. We tour around the country, do comedy clubs and other venues and things like that. We do a lot of meet and greets and whatnot. And so if you love the challenge, if it's something that interests you, check out Challenge Mania. If you don't, again, much like I wouldn't like go and tell, a Colts fan, hey, come and check out the Jags podcast. It's the same thing. It's like, it's going into season 40. It's got a lot of fans who have loved the show since the 90s or the 2000s, a lot of really rabid fans. But it's also one of those things that, I don't know how many new fans it's getting today, because it's one of the great things about the show. We were talking about this off the air, is you're following these people. Some of these people, CT, Johnny Bananas, Anissa, they've been on the show 20, 21 times. These people have watched these folks since they premiered on The Real World in 2001, 2002, 2003. So it's kind of this lifelong connection that they have with these people. And we kind of act as a gateway to them. We get to have them on the podcast, interview them, things like that. But yeah, it's basically, football, but with more rules.
So you say your co-host won 4 times, so essentially
He won 3. He won 3 times. I don't want to give him more credit than he deserves. No, he won 3 times, I believe 3 in a row. Towards the late 2000 kind of 8, 9, 7 range, and then he took a long layoff. Came back in 2017. Came in second place on the Dirty 30. And has since done 3 seasons of the Challenge All-Stars, but he has yet to get that 4th win. So we're hoping it'll come for him. But yeah, he's one of the kind of legends of the game. He's a very beloved cast member among the cast and the fans alike. He's not the biggest guy, but he's got the biggest bite in the bar. It's what do they say? It's not the dog and the bark in the dog, or the fight in the dog. For a guy who's his size, he's got a lot of tenacity, and I think people like that. He's one of those guys who goes out there, he gives it his all. He's had a lot of they do these things on the show called eliminations, where it's one-on-one. Basically, you got to try to rip something out of the other guy's hand. Some of these things go on for 2-3 hours, and he's known for having a lot of heart and a lot of grit.
It's not the size of the dog in the fight; it's the size of the fight in the dog.
There you go.
Yeah.
So winning it 3 times.
It took me a minute. The way you said it, I was like, "What?"
To put it in football terms, would that be equivalent to like the dynasty the Patriots had?
Well, no. Well, it depends, because it's so. The way the challenge works is it's for the most part, it can be an individual game, but sometimes you have seasons where there's like a small team, that wins, and it's 3 or 4, either guys, gals, a pair of 2, whatnot. And the quote unquote dynasties, you might be able to say on the challenge, there's a guy named Johnny Bananas who's won 7 times, 8 times if you count the Champs versus Stars spinoffs. There's a guy named CT who's won 5 times, and they've done so many of these that you don't have too many people who have won multiple seasons, but you do have a handful of people who have won 3, 4 times, etc. over the years. And so it's less, I would say, in football and in sports terms, obviously, it's a lot different, because you have, 51 people are winning a Super Bowl ring or whatever. It's a little different, but it is, I would say, probably harder to win a Super Bowl, and definitely harder to win 3 Super Bowls than to essentially win. And people might be listening to this and disagreeing with me, but I just think it's different in reality TV. There's other factors that I think, on in football, although maybe people who think that the Patriots have over the years done some nefarious things would disagree, but on the challenge, you can be really well liked, and it can get you very far in the game. And I think we can all agree, Robert Griffin III is pretty well liked, but that doesn't mean he wasn't out of the league in about 5 years. So it's just so
fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's switch over to the Jacksonville Jaguars. How did you become a fan of the Jaguars? And
so I'll try to condense this story, because it's not super interesting, but I grew up, my parents aren't big sports people, so I grew up kind of finding football my own way, which for a lot of us growing up in the 90s was through Madden, the game, and fantasy football and things like that. And so at the time, I was kind of like this, de facto front runner. I thought the Raiders were cool. This is in, the late 90s, early 2000s. They had this great team with Rich Gannon, and they're bringing in all these former studs that were still kind of having a third act, like Jerry Rice and Tim Brown and Bill Romanowski. And they had this awesome team. And so they were kind of my team in high school. We would go out and we'd watch the playoff games. It was around when Brady was, coming out, and since I didn't really have a loyalty to them, I went to Syracuse my freshman year, 2003, and they went from being in the Super Bowl to Rich Gannon. I forget if he retired or what, but they got this new guy, Tiasa Sopo or something, and boom, they fell off a cliff. They were the worst team in the league within 6 months. And so, rather than stick with them, because at the time I didn't really care, I kind of just became an atheist when it came to, having a team. I would root for whoever I had gambled on or whoever was on my fantasy team and things like that. And that really frustrated my college roommates, who just for 2 years would just wither away at me and be like, you need a team. You're this sports super fan. You need a team. So in 2005, it was my junior year of college. I spent a couple of weeks trying to figure out who should I be a fan of. Being from New York, I didn't want to all of a sudden just become a fan of the Jets and the Giants and the Patriots or whatever, because like all my friends are those fans, and I didn't want to be like the secondary kind of newcomer fan. I didn't want to be a front runner and pick the Colts or the Packers or some of these other teams that were doing really well at the time. At the time, the Jags were like 8-8. I think I narrowed it down to like them. I think there was maybe the Eagles I had thought about, maybe the Bengals, I forget, maybe the Bills. Had some other teams I was maybe thinking of. But I remember really liking the color scheme. I know this is all like not what you want to hear, but then as like it was a sign from God. There was this big game. It was either Sunday night or a Thursday night. Jags were underdogs. This is back when like Byron Leftwich was the quarterback, and they like blew out the Colts. And the headline on CBS Sports was Jagger Bomb. And as you saw, my Twitter handle is Shot of Yager. My last name is Yager. At the time I'm in college, I was very much connected to the the Jaeger of it all, and I would have like a blow up Jaeger bottle in my dorm room and things like that. And it was very much like leaning into that identity. And so I thought, oh, this is a sign. Jagger Bomb. They need a fan. I need a team. Let's do it. I can just like by nature of becoming a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, become the unofficial or official Jacksonville Jaguars fan of the Northeast. So it was off to the races. And I, did all this cliche stuff. I got the steering wheel cover. I got the big Jags magnet on my car. Went down to see them play the Eagles. And ever since then, I've been a Jags fan. And as I know you guys are well aware, there's probably been about 4 rewarding years in there total between 2005 and now. But part of that is, I will say, it's one of those things where it makes the years that are enjoyable more rewarding, I think. And then again, being someone who I'm never going to pretend to be that person who, grew up going to Jaguars games with his dad, and I would cry if they lost and this and that. Although I do get emotional when they do well, and that Chargers game last, year, I was definitely running down the street, watching it on my phone, coming home from, whatever bar I had gotten kicked out of. But like, it works out sometimes, some years that, the Jags are out of it by November, and I can just, again, put $100 on the Bengals and root for them or whatever, and not against the Jags, but I'm saying in general. So, but it is currently a very fun time to be a Jags fan, and to have, stuck with it as long as I have, because, the whole story starts with me kind of, again, in high school being like, oh, I'm a Raiders fan, but it's like, it's about those down years. Like, are you picking a new team, or are you this or that or whatever? And it's like, we can all have fun watching a game between two teams that we don't really love or whatever. And it's like, you can still do that without having to like buy that jersey and be that team's fan. So I've always kind of stuck with the Jags. And oddly enough, as you saw in my Twitter bio, I'm also a big professional wrestling fan. And, I actually have been a Jaguars fan since before they owned the team, but somewhere in the middle there, the Khan family bought the team. Right. And then in 2019, I believe it was 2019, Tony Khan, who is Shad Khan's son, but also very much plugged into the Jaguars organization himself. He is also a lifelong wrestling fan, and he convinced his father to put some money in. He convinced Turner, which is TBS and TNT, to put some faith and stock in them. And he started this new wrestling company called AEW, which if you're a wrestling fan is like very much a huge part of wrestling culture now. And they're very much kind of run in tandem with the Jags. Like they used to run a lot of events out of Daly's Place, which is the venue next to the Jaguars stadium. And there's sometimes Jaguars coaches or players will make cameos and this and that and whatnot. So I think that's like another weird kismet thing. It's like, literally when I picked the Jags, it was impossible to know that their owner's son would one day start a wrestling company, because A, they weren't even the owners, and B, I mean, how could you have that amount of foresight? And so, there's only one team in the NFL that is associated with a wrestling league, and it is the Jaguars. So I feel like I made the right call.
When you said it was a real kismet thing, did you know that was the name of Shad Khan's yacht?
What?
Kismet?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I had no idea. There you go.
That's
there
crazy.
You go. Had no idea what his yacht was called. No, that's awesome. See,
you haven't named your yacht?
No, I don't. You know what it is? The thing about living in New York City is you can't really own a yacht. Although I'm sure some people do, but instead I just pour all my money out into renting a 2-bedroom apartment. But yeah, maybe. But I think I might have to, because my name kind of. I mean, if you think about it, my name is Scott Yager with a Y. I feel like there's something you can play around with. Yacht Scott Yager, it was something like that, like Yacht Yager or something, or I don't know. There's something there, but we'll have to wait till I get a yacht.
Yeah,
we'll see if the Jags win the Super Bowl. Maybe I'll be able to, because I put a nice little wagey on us. So we'll see what happens there.
Oh,
I
nice.
put a wager on the Jags winning the Super Bowl. Probably not near as big as yours, but
well, no,
Somebody-
mine wasn't big at all. It was very like I would say. I mean, whatever I put down was not a lot, but it was when I bet it was like 36-1 or something crazy.
Wow.
Which now those have been probably cut in half a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's last year I bet us to win the division before the season at 8-1, and that
Dang.
worked out very well. So
nice.
Yeah, somebody else did that this offseason. They put down $55,000.
wow.
Yeah, and there's a video of it out there somewhere. So that guy's
See, that is a lot. For me,
he's
it's
probably
like,
happy right now.
oh yeah. Oh, he put 55,000 to win the division.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. That's good.
I know the guy who did it. He's I'm big into sports cards. He's one of the bigger sports cards.
Oh, nice.
Whatever you want to call him, I don't know. But he's part owner of a big company out of South Florida where they do a lot of sports card stuff. And yeah, he went to Vegas and dropped 55K. The Jaguars are going to win. It's looking like it's going to happen.
Well, I'll tell you, after that loss to the Texans week 2, I bet he was pooping his pants.
Yes, very much.
But no,
yeah. Sorry. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, the Texans and Duval for whatever reason, like, you know, they beat us with Davis Mills last year, so it's like it's the same thing with like when the Colts come to Jacksonville, like they can't win here and we can't beat the Texans here, so it's like I don't know, some sort of weird thing going on there. I feel like because like if you watch that game, it was just like a comedy of errors. I call it whatever. A fullback ran an 85-yard touchdown on us, like. That hasn't happened since. The special teams hasn't fell apart like that since, really.
Well, I'll say it's like these seasons are so long, and now they're even longer. But it's like at the time, I remember that loss just feel like, oh god, ugh. And then now looking back on it, I'm like, oh, I feel like that loss was good to have there. It's kind of a learning experience there, having that loss. I forget if it was right before the Chiefs loss or the right after. It was one or either before or after. But the Chiefs game felt like another one where you're watching it, you're like, wow, I really could have won this game. Didn't, but also they're the Chiefs, so like, okay, whatever, you take it in stride. But then to come out of that, 1 and 2 of the first 3 games or whatever it was just like, oh no, like did we all kind of like overshoot this thing? And then you realize now looking back on it, it's like that loss. Would you rather not have that loss? Probably, but also if that loss better prepared us for the next few games, maybe it was worthwhile. Like now that we're going in the San Francisco game, you might think like, oh, feel better about it because they've tanked the last 2 or whatever it's been. No, I don't like playing them after these losses because it's like, good teams only lose so many in a row. They only the good teams and the well-coached teams are able to take the losses and fuel them for the next game, if not the rest of the season. So I would almost have rather played the Niners if they were undefeated than after coming off of the last few performances they've had, because like the Jags did with that Houston loss. Like, I think, you lose 1 or 2 that are like, really surprising. And if you're a really good team, like you don't, you do make someone pay for it. And more often than not, it's like the next good team you play,
Right. To prove that you actually are worth something, not your most recent results. And on top of that, like the Niners are going to have a chip on their shoulder, but think about Chase Young, who they just picked up. Oh, he's gonna have a bit of a chip on his shoulder. So,
well, I joked, it's like they made that trade specifically because they knew they were coming out of the bye to play us, and they were like, we need more. But no, you hate to see that. I didn't love that. Although apparently the offensive lineman that the Jags picked up from the Vikings, I think, is apparently going to be pretty useful and get plugged in and actually, so, maybe it's ironic. You kind of see maybe both sides of the ball, improvements made from the trade deadline. But I would have liked maybe one other little, because I thought that this trade deadline was set up for like, as we saw with the Niners being able to get Chase Young and stuff. That I feel like there were so many teams that because of injury or whatnot were really just like getting rid of some flashy guys and some flashy players and stuff. And I didn't necessarily expect us to get him, but I expected like someone to get Derrick Henry and things like that. So I was a little underwhelmed by the trade deadline, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me
they
too.
oversold it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so like Baku, like in the offseason, like he was looking for a pass rusher, and then during the trade deadline, like he was trying to get one still. So like, I mean, he recognizes that there's a little bit of a problem like with the Jags defense too. And then after it came, after the trade deadline ended, Mia O'Brien, local sports reporter, she mentioned that he he had tried to get like a certain, pass rusher, and people were upset at that. Like, you didn't try hard enough, you didn't do
Right.
enough, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
well, it
I
stinks also to not get anyone, but also have the information out there that you were trying to, because then it also has
Yeah.
kind of the inverse effect where like you feel like you don't feel as good about the guys you have, and then also you didn't get that person, so
Yeah.
whoever it was. So it's kind of the worst of both worlds there. But I think our pass rush has been pretty in the games where we've needed to be, and the games that we've looked good. The pass rush has been very good, I think. But
Yeah.
obviously we have the ups and downs with that, and so and I don't think you can ever have enough of that. That's the thing. It's like, I mean, you don't look at the
Yeah,
Niners and
exactly.
say they need Chase Young. It's like then
Right.
they get to add him. It's like,
Yeah, we're hoping
it
like
changes
Trayvon
again.
Walker turns into that on the opposite side of Josh Allen, and he's showing some flashes here and there, but it's like Jaguars fans seem to want to win now. It's kind of crazy. It's like after not winning for so long, whatever. Like, you would think that we would have some patience when it comes to this, but like it's just the NFL culture, like in general, whatever, how it's changed over the years and stuff. It's really reactionary to me. I mean, of course I want to like go to the Super Bowl, and I think that would be like awesome if it did happen. But if it didn't, knowing like how good this team is and how like they're growing still, like it doesn't make me like upset, like it wouldn't like upset me if it didn't happen as much.
I would just love to be. I'll be honest, like okay, so what was it? 2017 going into 2018, where you have that run, go to the AFC Championship, and then a half away from going to the Super Bowl, ironically against who is now our coach, but
Yeah.
and then it was boom, back off the cliff, right? And two of the next four first overall picks, right? And so, and
Yeah.
I believe going into that portal season, we weren't that good either. I forget but so it's kind of like a flash in the pan, kind of whatever, right?
Yep. Right.
Obviously, cool. It would be great to win the Super Bowl, fine. But if you gave me the choice of, I would rather just be in the mix for a few years, and get to every season kind of, because look, I mean, let's be honest, like now everyone's kind of down on them, I'm talking about the Buffalo Bills, but like they've just been, ever since they've gotten Josh Allen and they've just been in the mix, they've been in the top 6 teams, in the Super Bowl contenders. And look, have they come out on top? No. Are they having a frustrating go now? But this has probably been the most fun the Bills fans have had since the early 90s, right? Same thing for the Bengals. The year starts and everyone's crapping on Burrow and this and that, and is he hurt and whatnot. But it's like the Bengals also have had a really fun few years here. They go to a Super Bowl, whatever. And again, it looks like they're still back in the mix. Stay in the mix, right? Like I would almost rather, if you gave me the choice of like go to one Super Bowl and lose, yeah, that'd be fun, cool. But like, or just be in the hunt for like the AFC title, etc., for the next 5 to 6 years, I would almost rather take that, just because, look, I mean, like you've seen it, like that Matt Ryan Falcons run where they go and they blow the lead in the Super Bowl, they lose to the Patriots, right? Like, you kind of still look back on Matt Ryan, who I think won an MVP in that, Super Bowl appearance, but like you don't look at them as being like an actual contender of a team and like that made a real dent on the league. Same goes for like that Bears run where they went to the Super Bowl and they lost to the Colts. Like to me, like the teams that are in the mix, you remember those Donovan McNabb Eagles teams because they were in the mix every year, right? That's how Andy Reid got all those wins, where now he's doing it again on the Chiefs. Now he's getting the wins. The reason he has all those wins to start that career is because they were just really good. They were like a 12 win a year team, and so I'd rather that. So I'd rather the consistency, and like I'd rather not do anything too brash or too crazy. I mean, like Trayvon Walker, it's like everyone keeps comparing him to Hutchinson, right? Because he went before him, which of course, sure, you can always look at that. You always look at these guys got drafted ahead of Justin Jefferson and blah, 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 whatever. Right. And it's like, look, is it possible that when it's all said and done, Hutchinson is the better player overall, or maybe has better stats, or fine, whatever. But I just think if Trayvon Walker can even just be like a solid guy who starts for us for the next, 7 years, like boom, I don't know. I just don't need to like, run off the cliff just yet with that. I'm a little annoyed every week. They're just comparing their two stats and things like that. And I know it's ironic because the Lions are also kind of in the same right now. Yeah, through the season, kind of similar records. I think we almost have the same record, and then we both have the bye. So people are just really comparing the two of them. But I feel like he's got, like, people are acting like he has like a short leash or something. Like, oh, like if he's not the the best pass rusher in the league by the end of this year, we got to move on or it's a failure. It's like, come on. I mean, really? I mean,
Yeah, it's just tough because rarely in your franchise history will you get the number 1 overall pick. Unless, of course, you're the Cleveland Browns. You kind of get it often, but you want to make sure you hit on that. And I'm one of those fans that's still not a big fan of the Trayvon Walker. In fact, if I were to go back today, I would still draft Aiden Hutchinson over Trayvon Walker. In my opinion,
a lot of people say that. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, look,
but,
I just don't want to. Again, it's like I don't think that I think the issue is that people are acting now, and I can't really remember at the time how like crazy of a, I do remember a little bit of it that they were like, oh, they kind of made a move, like, that you would have assumed it would have been Hutchinson, and they went with Walker. But I mean, it's one of those things where I still think it's a little early to be like, because like, look, like it's a little early to say that it's that, dumb of a move. It's like, I think everyone's already kind of penciling in Hutchinson to be a Hall of Famer and Walker to be a bust. It's like, I still think it's a little, if you look at the numbers, they're a little closer than that, So,
right.
And it's just possible that maybe he takes a little bit longer to develop. Like, that's okay. It's like, I don't think, I do think people think if you're, the number 1 overall pick and you're at that position, there are certain positions people do kind of expect you to right out the gate be like a real big difference maker. But yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to like put it on record, but it's like, sure, I would say most people would probably agree with you that if they could snap their fingers and redo that, they would maybe have done that. But
that's not saying like, I hope Trayvon Walker goes on to have a Pro Bowl Hall of Fame career, right? Like, I hope that happens. And that's not, and I also, I still think he hasn't reached his ceiling for sure. So could he pass Aiden Hutchinson? I don't think he'll ever surpass him as far as like just straight sacks go, because I think Aiden Hutchinson, all they pretty much ask him to do is just get after the quarterback. I think what they're asking Walker to do is a little bit more than just put your hands in the ground and go after the quarterback. And I think most Jaguars fans know that, like, he affects the game not just at the sack, but he's also good against the run, right? So, and I think outside of Jacksonville, people don't understand that. And I think once he puts, I mean, he's done well with the sacks totals this year as well. So I think he's still blooming into zone. And
I think Hutchinson's also just that easier. Like I just think, like, when I was growing up, I remember it was just like easy to understand. Like, okay, there's interior linemen, there's outside edge rushers,
right?
And Hutchinson just seems like a quintessential, like, he's a guy who just, like you said, hand on the ground, down, rush the quarterback, like, boom, gets a lot of sacks, reminds you, like, what he's doing. It's easy to quantify what he's doing. He's in on every play, right? And Walker's part of this newer thing that, kind of got trendy around the mid 2000s and still is the case, where it's like, you're kind of a linebacker, you're kind of a edge rusher kind of thing. You're meant to be a little faster, and you're not like, it's not as obvious the difference you're making on every play. You sometimes it seems like either you're taking off certain plays or you're just not a part of the action on certain plays, or you're not as relevant. And I think it's more of a scheme thing. I think the Jaguars in the past have sort of been, again, like when I became a Jags fan, it was Marcus Stroud and John Henderson, and it was just like very easy to understand pass rush,
Right.
And I think that Hutchinson, both, he's the kind of player who turns your defense into that, right? I think having already have Josh Allen, who's again sort of more of in that Walker range, you kind of have to go with what you already have, right? So rather than rewrite the entire defensive script around bringing in Hutchinson, they tried to bring in someone who kind of, fit the mold of what they were doing. And I just don't think, to the naked eye, unless you're really, I mean, to me, it's like, to me, it's about winning games. So if you win games and we're winning games and our defense is shutting down teams and winning when we need to, I don't care if he has 2 less sacks a game than Hutchinson, or I don't care if on certain plays you don't even know where he is on the field, whatever, because I want to win the games. Whereas Hutchinson is one of those players where, even someone who doesn't understand football, you're watching them on defense and you get it. It's just like every single time. He's like Grant Wistrom on the Rams, like from those Super Bowl teams. It's just like, so yeah. I just think there's a little optics thing with it too, with that, where I don't know if, again, does that fit? Does that really fit with what they were going for with the schematics of this defense. I mean, I do think it would have had to kind of be reworked around him. So I can't complain with 6-2. So it's just like,
No,
that's what I'm saying.
I mean, exactly the way you said it, whatever. I seen Trayvon set the edge. I seen him stop the run. I seen him go after the quarterback. I seen him in the second level, like stopping a wide receiver or whatever. He's all around the field. And then I see Aiden Hutchinson on Sports Center doing the spin move, like to get to the quarterback.
He's the Michael Strahan, like that's what, you know what I mean? Yeah. He's that guy who just, exactly. He's just over and over again. He's either getting them or he's almost getting them or he's making them do something dumb or whatever. And he's the guy that every time, especially if you got like a guy like Chris Collinsworth out there, where like in between plays when they're bored, they're just showing you slow motion highlights of look at this guy. Look,
here's a guy.
They can't even get a hand on this guy. I mean, can you imagine what it looks like having this guy coming at you right now? My God, and then with Walker, it's not necessarily the same thing every time out.
They mic'd up his family in the stands that one.
Oh, game. I saw that. Yeah. Well, that's the other thing I do think is interesting is because he was a Michigan guy, right? And I think his dad also was a Michigan guy, and now he's playing in Detroit. So I don't know. I mean, look, obviously I would have loved to have him, but I like that. I feel like he was meant to go there. So even if the dominoes start falling in different ways because we maybe didn't make the right call at first, I do think just as a fan of the league, I think it's cool that he's on the. If he's not going to be on the Jaguars, I'm happy he's on the Lions. I don't have any animosity against them. That's a franchise I can relate to quite a bit. So I said you start fantasy booking these Super Bowls and things like that. I think Jags Lions Super Bowl would be just unbelievable between little story that I think only our fan bases really care about with those picks, but they could run that into the ground. But then also the just the tortured fan bases and the symmetry there. And I think right now, maybe I'm wrong, but I think we are both very likable teams at this point.
I was just thinking like how many people would say the NFL is scripted if that happened.
Oh, you think? I think the opposite. I think people would do the whole NFL is screwed. This rating is going to be bad thing,
right?
If that was
really,
yeah, because the NFL the way that. And this is so funny because this is why I was annoying like a couple of weeks ago when the Pittsburgh fans were like, the ref rigged it for the Jags. I'm like, well, first of all, I was like, unless the refs literally bet on the Jags or whatever, like I'm telling you right now, there's no one who wants like if you just in a vacuum, the Steelers are like one of the most like traveling fan bases. They just like they rate really well. People like again one of the most storied franchises. There you go.
The refs dropped this ball somehow.
Yes. Well, that's hilarious. I saw that too. Yeah, the refs threw the game. It's like there's so, and it's like, and I thought also just like for a franchise like that and for guys on that team that are supposed to be kind of like a gritty man up team to come out of that game saying that, I was like, oh, that is not the Steelers culture. But so I just think it's like the teams that when you go, oh, is it rigged, whatever. It's like if you're getting the Cowboys or the Steelers or maybe the Packers or whatever. Right. And I don't think the Jaguars or the Lions or anybody like that are having any. That's not what the NFL wants at all. No, that's definitely not. I mean, look, you got to remember that's how we would script it. That's how we would want it. But that's not necessarily how the average fan thinks. The average fan would be having to research our teams, going into that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking like the narrative that they could paint the storytelling like of like imagine like the preview of the game before the Super Bowl, whatever, like talking about the history of both franchises or whatever and how like we've been in the bottom for so long, whatever. Now that we're at the peak of like the sport and stuff like that.
It would be great.
That would be like a Cinderella story times two.
Yeah.
And America does love that.
Scott's right though, because what's going to get eyeballs on the TV, the Lions and the Jaguars, or the Cowboys and
Chiefs.
Chiefs, right? Exactly. Yeah. That's where and eyeballs equals money, right?
Yeah, I think the two ways that a team becomes so like obviously the Chiefs are a pretty storied franchise, but like it's the recurrence of like they've been good. They have Pat Mahomes. Like that's the other thing. Like the Patriots became that because they had Brady, because of the success, Belichick, whatever, and they kind of got elevated. And then you have the programs themselves. So it's like kind of twofold. Right now, San Francisco is kind of both of those. It's a storied program, and now they're crushing it, and they've been to a Super Bowl relatively recently, and so it's like you had the best of both worlds. Then you have us, small market team. and we're not normally good. I mean, you do have obviously, I think, a very likable face of the franchise in Trevor
Right.
Lawrence, and somebody who people are very familiar with from his college years and things like that. But and then the Lions, I think they have the Hard Knock season recently that people watched. But again, like unless you're playing fantasy football and stuff, like Amon-Ra St. Brown is not the household name that even like Julian Edelman was. It just that Travis Kelce is now, especially with the Taylor Swift thing, he's one of the most famous people in the league. You throw her in there, I mean, they would much rather them come out of the East than us. Trust me. Even the Bills and Josh Allen, I think, and I think even Baltimore, who I'm also petrified of playing, by the way. I think them also with Lamar and just kind of, again, those couple Super Bowls they've had in the past and whatnot. So I would say we're probably, I'm trying to think like if there was like an NFL meeting and people were talking about like, well, who do we really want in the Super Bowl? I'd say we're probably below every team I just named and probably the Bengals and the Dolphins probably even too. I think they'd rather have it there than us, but that's what I love about it. That's what I love about last year. I mean, especially with us and the Chargers and everybody loves Herbert and this and that and whatnot. And it's like, and man, did I want to beat the Chiefs? That would have been so great. But yeah, I think that there's a little bit of I don't know that we necessarily are like America's underdog yet. I think maybe after last year, maybe this year we could be, but yeah, I don't know that we have that on our side yet, which is fine because I think we're just like a spoiler team. We just like spoil, like last week, we just spoil, the Steelers. I was worried that was gonna be a trap game for us, that we're gonna come in and maybe lose and this and that. But I'm glad that we stuck it to them. And obviously I love that Bills win we got in the UK, which, so yeah.
I did want to point out, Cody, you talked about the trade that the Jaguars were potentially going to make for someone on the defense that didn't fall through. That was Josh Uche. And remember, you were saying the Jaguars fans were upset that we didn't make the trade because it was only a 4th or 5th round pick for him. But if you look at it, like that's one of those where people just wanted to make a move for the sake of making a move. Josh Uche has been horrible the past 2 years. This year, he's only got 1 sack. Last year, he totaled 3 sacks. He had one good year. Last year he had 11.5. But before that, he had 3 and 1. This year, he's at 2 sacks. So I know a lot of people were upset, and a lot of fans in the fan base were upset that they didn't make the move. But it's like a 4th or 5th round pick for a guy who's not even middle of the road right now. I'm okay.
Yeah, I don't need it. I mean, look, we'll definitely know a lot more. I mean, so I think it's, this Sunday is such a huge game, but I mean, look, if we lose to the Niners, am I going to be surprised? No, it's about like how tough do we play them as well, things like that. And then it's, it's Tennessee after that, but then I know we've still got the Browns, the Bengals, and the Ravens we got to play, right?
So, back to back, Bengals, Browns, Ravens, and then the Bucks, who, with Baker Mayfield, that's kind of a wild card.
They're a spoiler team. Yeah, they're a team you got to, you can't. They've been a team that I think has played better against teams you'd expect them to lose to, and then they've lost to some teams that you'd wonder like, oh, are they as good as this team?
Right.
But yeah, so a tough stretch here. So it's like, I mean, we can come out of those 3 tough ones you named, and San Francisco 2-2. I still feel pretty good. Obviously I'd love to win more than that, but it's gonna, I'm gonna try not to get too, and then that's the other thing is you can't, take the foot off the gas for that Tampa game, for the 2 Titans. We cannot lose either of those Titans games. That's
there's one storyline that people seem to be forgetting is that this is Trent Baalke's potential revenge game.
Oh,
people forget that he came over from San Francisco. I believe he got fired from San Francisco after putting together a Super Bowl roster for them. So is this his revenge game?
Well, and then you always wonder what's like, it's revenge this. Then you're also like, is there any inside information? Is there anything you can kind of, share with people? Hey, is there anything that he knows about some of these guys that we maybe wouldn't know? Yeah, things like that. You always wonder, right?
Right.
So, but yeah, I think I'm very excited. I'm so annoyed they did not flex this into the Sunday night game.
Yeah,
I think it's another Jets game. Jets in Oakland. I think Jets were just on Monday night, and now they're playing Sunday night against Oakland. Not Oakland, against Vegas. I can't even call them Vegas.
And we're actually, I didn't know this until I just looked it up. We're actually underdogs hosting the San Francisco 49ers at home.
Sounds about right. Was it probably 2.5 or something?
3 minus 3.
Yeah.
Oh, plus
I think that sounds about right. I would almost rather be the underdog. there,
Yeah.
just mentally,
Some bulletin board material, right?
Yeah, bulletin board material. I just think also, just as somebody who does a little bit of gambling, and I do a thing called 5 for 5, and I love a good home dog,
Yeah.
Because I mean, just 3 points. I mean, that's pretty close. That means, what that means they'd be favored by 6 or something if we played in San Francisco. And look, I think they are the more, again, you take away those recent losses, and I think that spread definitely makes sense. So, and we're both coming off that bye, so it's all even. I think they're a little healthier than they were a couple weeks ago. So,
yeah, and they have, I'm a big fan of McCaffrey. I know that he's not on our team, but the guy is just like Cody likes to say all the time. He's got a dog in him.
McCaffrey, he is so good. It's like he's great. He's unbelievable. Yeah,
but
Trayvon Walker's gonna lock that
stats.
down there.
I hope so.
I'm looking at stats here, and you would just assume that McCaffrey's just blowing everybody out of the water, but Etienne has 583 yards. McCaffrey has 652. So Etienne's not that far off from what a lot of people would say is the best.
I mean, we were talking about how, like, okay, Trayvon Walker, like, all right, has he met expectations, whatever. I mean, to me, Etienne has blown away all expectations. For me, going into this year, when they drafted Tank Bigsby, I was like, oh no. Just from a selfish fantasy perspective, I wondered if maybe it would be better for the team and for winning if, like, when we got down to the, the 6 or the 3, whatever, you put in him, and it was going to be a touchdown vulture, as they call it. But no. It's like, Etienne is that guy that we're relying on the goal line. He's also the guy who, even if we get to 19, he's scoring from there. So, he's been unbelievable. He's been a touchdown machine. He's been just all-purpose yards, just amazing. I just love that. That just like flat. He ran against Pittsburgh. He got the big catch for the touchdown. After I had thought, after coming back from looked like he left the game, and I was like, oh my, like our season flashed before my eyes, because I was like, he's someone who has really. The one thing I will say, collectively, I think they've played well, but I think the wide receiver core has been a little bit underwhelming from what you might have thought after, especially game 1. Calvin Ridley comes in with those huge big catches and touchdowns. It's like, and a lot of it's been, the slack has been picked up by Etienne,
right?
So, yeah, but so he's, I think, and the other kind of thing, elephant in the room is, and again, I personally don't care because I'd rather win, and we're 6-2, so who cares? But Trevor Lawrence is someone who I think statistically has been underwhelming people this year. But again, I would rather win. Would I rather have the guy who's would I rather have, I mean, this is kind of a weird comparison because, we did end up going to the AFC Championship game, but like Blake Bortles, who had like that year where he had like 35 touchdowns, but also I think like 20 picks or something like that. And was never actually, I never thought of him as like a good decision maker, but he kind of somehow was, he was just throwing a ton of touchdowns, fantasy wise, he was great, but like, would you rather have more of a, game manager who can get it done, has it in him to throw the three touchdowns, but like maybe sometimes you look up and, Travis has the 2 and whatever, and Trevor only has 1 or whatnot. So, but I think that's why people have already started these. Oh, would you rather have CJ Stroud or Trevor Lawrence? That. I think everyone kind of expected him to already be this like 4 touchdown. I will admit I did too expect him to this year take that step and be like a 3 to 4 touchdown a game guy, and maybe we win. And it's only been the latter. It's only been the winning. So,
right.
I've been blaming it on Press Taylor for the most part, like in the first half of the season. But like, like a couple of games, like we're playing with a lead, we're running the ball, we're chewing clock, so it's like, we don't really need him to be that guy. And we haven't like played a game yet where like, he's had to make a, miraculous CJ Stroud comeback like he did it, like CJ Stroud had to do against the Bucks. So, I mean, I understand like where people are coming from, whatever, but like the game isn't fantasy football, like
100%.
Like,
if you watch the games, you see that, I mean, there's a lot of weird drops, where you're like, okay, that's not his fault per se. I mean, is there a slightly more perfect ball that could have been thrown? Fine. But like I remember just in London, over those 2 games in London, there was a ton of like just missed touchdown grabs and things like that, that would help fill it out. And the thing is that like, it's not costing us games. So does it truly matter? No. I mean, would it be nice? It would be nice if, and I will say that, again, I blame more the play calling sometimes, because I think there are a couple. What really annoys me is when I watch the games and there are drives that we get this great momentum, but then we barely come up short on that third down, and then we botch the fourth down and end up having to turn it over. And it's there's been some awful fourth down play calling that I think some of those drives would have been maybe touchdown drives for Trevor and whatnot. And what I'll say is that is almost more important is that he's not the kind of guy who, after either those mistakes or the play calling mistakes or those drops and whatnot, he's like, he does the Men in Black memory eraser. He's like, that's how we were end up able. He had one of the worst halves in the history of football against the Chargers in the playoffs, and we end up winning the game. So to me, it's almost better and a more worthy asset to not, like, some of these guys. You watch some of these games and you can tell when someone's having a bad game, they're having a bad game and they're going to end with a bad game, and they can't get out of their own way. And Trevor's the kind of guy who he can have a bad quarter, have a bad half, have some bad plays, whether they're his bad play or whether you shouldn't be, running an out on, or a wide toss on a fourth down or whatever. And like, he doesn't let that ruin the rest of the game for him, which I think is, that gets you farther in the playoffs than almost just being a guy who you only win when you throw 4 touchdowns. Like, that's Josh Allen, like Josh Allen's a guy who he has these like perfect games, and then he's got the games where you just see it starts to go wrong and you're like, oh no, this is going really wrong, So our game was one of them for them,
Yeah, it seems like there's two sides of Trevor, like, like the smiling, happy, like, face, kind of guy, and then like all of a sudden he gets locked in, like the switch flips on, and then he turns into like this, like the second half of the Chargers game, whatever. Like, if you watch that, you're like, oh, okay, we got a real quarterback now, right? And I knew, and I felt that way, like, after watching like so many terrible Jags quarterbacks. Yeah. And it was like I knew what I was seeing or whatever, even though like I haven't had any real frame of reference for it. But like, so on the Steelers game, he threw a pick in the end zone. And that one was confusing to me. So I waited for the press conference, and he said that he went through his progressions all the way to 3. And then, whoops. And then Calvin Ridley was there, and he was like triple covered. So he just threw it up or whatever, and he knew that he made a mistake, but I think it's because he has that clutch gene in him, whatever. He believed that he could make that throw, and I've seen him make some crazy ones this year so far. That double covered Calvin Ridley throw on against the Colts through like a seam or whatever, the insane window or whatever. So it's like I'm not jealous of CJ Stroud. Like, I know that Trevor could be that guy, you know what I mean? But he just hasn't needed to recently. So,
right. Yeah. If looking back at the Jaguars, like, yeah, we lost those 2 games, the Chiefs and the Texans, early on in the season, but I don't want to say we've been on cruise control, but we've pretty much had all the games, the past 5 games that we've won, pretty much in hand for the majority of each game. Like, there hasn't been any point in the game where it's like, we're going to lose this. Right. And so Trevor hasn't needed to put up 4 touchdowns a game. Like, CJ Stroud against an NFC South team, which I think most of us can agree that the NFC South is the worst division in all of sports, not just football, and that he needed to put up 4 touchdowns again, or was it 5? Yeah, against the Tampa Bay Bucks just to get the win. Whereas I feel like if it's the Jaguars, we're such a complete team that we're just not going to see those stats out of Trevor Lawrence. And that's a good thing as a Jaguars fan. I mean, do you want to see Trevor throw those 5 touchdowns? I mean, it'd be cool. But like you've said, Scott, like, let's just be competitive and win. Yeah. Like, if that means 0 touchdowns in a game and 150 yards, I'll take it.
And truthfully, it's like that stuff that to the naked eye, to the random fan, to this person who's watching the highlights on SportsCenter, the person who plays fantasy, whatever, like you said, like, those are the things that stand out. And you just start to associate, okay, that means this player's good or whatever, which, sure, 100%. You can't throw 5 touchdowns and bring your team back unless you are good, for sure. But again, it's like, who really cares that the Jags are 6-2 right now other than Jags fans? Not many people. So people are just annoyed. They might have him on their fantasy team. They might be betting his over touchdowns, whatever, and not getting that and assuming, oh, that means he's, not having the season you'd expect, or it's a him problem. But no, it is more of a game script thing, like you said. I mean, and I think the play calling has both been, again, like I said, in certain scenarios kind of frustrating, but I think overall I've been very impressed by how creative the play calling is, and the stuff that they run with ETN and the things that they do to score and to get out of some of these big third and longs and things like that. And they don't always call on Trevor Lawrence to throw a touchdown, or they don't always call on Trevor at all. So they're, I think by doing that is sometimes, again, moves the chains, gets the win, but then you look on it on paper and you're like, oh, well, only 14 fantasy points from Trevor Lawrence. What's up with Trevor Lawrence? It's like, well, that's what won us the game. That's what we needed. That's what we wanted,
Yeah, the only difference between brave and stupid is if it works.
Right. And like the best of both worlds now is like what they're getting in Baltimore from Lamar Jackson, because it's like, he's stuffing all the stats, he's doing everything himself, and they're also winning. That's why, between them, between that, him, and then the defense there, that's a team I'm kind of scared of. But what I like about our schedule this year is, like, for instance, last year, obviously it didn't, it's not like we can blame one player for this, but maybe we can blame one player for this. But we almost beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. I think a lot of that came from playing them earlier in the year, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people look at that as like a pivot point in the season, like after that game, and then we went on our run. And so this year we're getting to kind of do the test run with, we play the Chiefs, play the Steelers, play the Bills, and we're playing Baltimore, we're playing San Francisco, we're playing, Cincinnati. And so obviously I want to win all those games. That'd be great. But also you either win or you learn, and I like that. I like that it won't be our first go round with these teams in the playoffs. And selfishly, maybe it's just the inferiority complex in me. I feel like we have more to learn about them than they have to learn about us. Like I'm less worried about them kind of figuring us out first go round, and then, we play them again and they got us figured out, than the other way around. Like I'd rather have that test run with Lamar and, with Burrow, and like we're getting on Sunday with the Niners, then, I'm not scared about them like figuring us out, in the first go around, and then we come back and then, oh no, we can't, nothing's working for us,
Right.
Out of all the games that we have coming up, I mean, obviously Cincinnati is going to be so much fun to watch, and the Ravens. But the one that I'm probably most worried about is the Browns.
Oh, yeah.
They have a stud of a defense over at the Browns. And as being a Jaguars fan, we've seen Deshaun Watson at his best when he was at the Texans. And I feel like anytime he can flip that switch and run all over us and put up some mega yards. So out of all the games upcoming, like I said, I feel like the Browns is the one that's the most intriguing and worrisome.
Well, the Browns is also, it's what sucks is I'm totally with you. I felt the same way about like the Steelers, where it's like, so, if we beat any of those other teams, if we beat the Niners, if we beat the Ravens, if we beat the Bengals, people are going to come in on Monday and say, oh, are the Jags the best team in the AFC? Blah, blah. We'll get points for beating them. We're not going to get any points for beating the Browns, right?
Exactly.
But the Browns are a dirty, nasty, ugly team. The defense is, again, the kind of defense that'll give us trouble. And if we win that game, we're not getting any brownie points. And if we lose that game, people are coming in on Monday talking about, are the Jags all they're cracked up to be? So it's the worst kind of a trap game. It's not even a trap game because the Browns are good. They're just one of the least sexy teams in the NFL. I hate playing unsexy good teams because it's just it's the worst of both worlds, like you want, especially, I mean, like that Cincy game, I think is in prime time. So as long as we don't put up an absolute stinker, you know what I mean? Just being on that stage and having people watch us and things like that. It would be great to walk out with the win, but if you lose to the Bengals, It's so funny how it's like, I think now with these added games, like this season really feels like 3 little seasons. Like I think like you have the first 6 to 7 weeks, or 6 weeks, if you will. I think more like the first 5, where everyone just jumps to conclusions. Like after 5 weeks, people were talking about the Bengals are done. They're not even going to make the playoffs, And then you have this little middle season in here where people re-get their stride and this and that kind of sets the course for the last third. And then you see that, you, depending on how your schedule lines up and this and that, and how well you play in that back third, like, I mean, we played ourselves into a playoff spot in that last third. And then this year, ironically, we're going to be playing a lot of these tough teams in the last third. But it's like I remember after the first 5 games, it looked like the Browns looked great. The Bengals didn't, this and that. Then the Browns lose their running backs and, come back. And now they're kind of, again, the what have you done for me lately, but also just like a scary team that's still good. They're just not as flashy and they're not as sexy as the Bengals and as the Ravens and as the 6-2s and the Eagles would be if we were playing them. And so yeah, I mean, I'm petrified by that game. That's one I would really not be surprised to lose, and I really don't want to lose it, but I would not be surprised. That's not a week I'm betting on the Jaguars. I'll tell you that.
Right.
That's that's got trap game written all over it.
Yeah, a Browns loss would move the needle more than a 49ers win, and that sucks.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And the perception of how people.
Yeah, no, it's true. Well, and also it's ironic. I mean, you can't even fathom this like when you're looking out at like a couple of weeks in advance because you can't even realize who everyone's playing. But it also matters like what other teams are like. So I like when we beat the Steelers, I forget exactly what happened, but I think like the Eagles were. I mean, I don't know if they were on a bye or didn't play, but like I think that the Niners lost. Like it was perfect. It was like we beat the Steelers, who were good enough that since we beat the Steelers and it took us to 6-2, and everyone else had I think that maybe the Bills had lost that week. Like enough had happened. Maybe you know what it was. Also, I think Denver beat the Chiefs. Like enough happened where boom on Monday. Stephen A. Smith, everybody's ranking us like second, third overall, whatever. And you kind of forget that matters almost as much when it comes to perception as anything, So we have no idea what some of these other teams are going to do going into it, but it really is interesting how it's like what the team you're playing does the 2 weeks before and the 2 weeks after matters, and what these other teams are doing the same week you get that big win or that big loss matters just as much. Right. Because a week where every good team is just steamrolling and moving on, right? Your win doesn't matter as much. But if you get that win where these other teams kind of look bad, you're like, oh, wow. Look at sneaky Jacksonville. So, but yeah, I'm really pumped for Sunday. I think that should be I think it'll be a really good game. I think that we're kind of similar teams. I think, obviously I think that they've been over the last few years, the more successful version of it for sure. But yeah, so I don't even know. It's one of those weeks where I'm not putting sometimes I will put a bet or two on the Jags or something like that. But this week is just going to be so fun to watch as like a game itself that it's like, what's the point? So many real life stakes and stuff. So, it's a coin flip. I think it is a really, really close game to call.
I agree with you. I feel like if you look in the mirror, like it's almost the same teams. I think for me personally, what it'll come down to is the moves that we've made and the people that have come off the IR and all the transactions we made on the offensive line in the past few weeks.
Yeah.
Is that enough to stop their defensive front? I think that's where it's going to boil down to. We know Trevor Lawrence, even with a hurt knee, the guy can run down the field and make some plays. But the problem in this whole season, I feel like, is the offensive line hasn't given Trevor Lawrence the amount of time needed to really shine. I know we talked about that he hasn't really needed to absolutely shine, but if he just gets that extra, we've seen this season, if he just gets the extra second, I mean, he can really make some big moves. And so if our offensive line can outplay their defensive line, I think we get the win. Plus the home field advantage. I mean, people don't know this, but the Jaguars fans really show out, especially in these big time games.
I will say what stinks about not having Zay Jones is like what you were saying, Cody, is that like Trevor's looking his first, his second, his third option, whatever. And it's like, without having Zay out there, you really don't know. I mean, we're blessed in that we obviously have a great running back who can catch the ball. We have a great tight end, who's almost more of a receiver than a tight end, but not having Zay out there just like completely opens it up, where by not having him out there, and like you said, not having that extra second, when he's being rushed and he doesn't have that obvious, like, oh, I'm going to look to this guy next, because it's really obvious when it's like, okay, you've got Kirk, you've got Ridley, you've got Zay. Those are your three guys, these three alpha guys who could be number ones on any other team. And then now you get rid of Zay and it's like, well, who is that other guy? We don't have really that other guy that comes into play with those. And it normally ends up being Evan or Travis, but I'm saying like that extra second becomes way more important because he's looking, and it might, if we have another receiver out on the field, it's not someone he's comfortable with. It's not someone that he thinks can make that play the way that he thinks Zay Jones can make that play, So I think he's probably out again this week. I don't know how long he's going to be out, but he's someone we definitely need back, I think. One of the most underrated players in the league.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Mike Dempsey from 1010 XL was telling us that, like, in the beginning of the year, watching him on the in practice and stuff, and I was like, it wasn't really like surprising to me, but like the way the year has gone when he's been on the field is something really special, and it's a big loss. So we got Tyson Campbell, Andre Cisco, and Walker Little coming back for this game.
That's good.
Sorry. Our defense should be better, and then Walker Little has been killing it at left guard. So he's going to have the starting job over Ezra Cleveland, the guy that we just picked up from the Vikings.
Yeah, so I was wondering. So he's not going to play right away,
right?
Yeah,
Ezra?
Yeah. That's as far as I know, as far as what I'm hearing or whatever from the local reporters.
Hey man, I'm not complaining about someone coming fresh in off another team and get their first time out is against the Niners. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Man,
so
what about?
Go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna ask Scott, how do you feel about Anton and his performance this year, being our first round draft pick? And the dude has had to go up against some studs, not just any Joe Schmoes. I mean, he's been going up against Chris Jones is no schmuck.
I always say it's like I cannot pretend, even the amount of football I've watched, I cannot pretend to actually be able to quantify the performance of an offensive lineman from game to game, season to season, other than the experts telling me, And then the other thing that stands out to you is when you watch the game and there's a costly penalty or whatever, right? And so I will say this, talk about like players coming in and doing it right away. I mean, I can't think of, other than like Joe Thomas, how many offensive linemen come into the league and right away, you're like, oh wow, this guy's already blowing everybody off the line. So to me, look, they had the confidence of taking him. I watched when I assume you guys have seen it, maybe not, but that Hunt series they have on YouTube, the kind of behind the scenes thing. And my favorite episode of it, I didn't watch all of them, but I've seen probably 4 or 5 of them. And my favorite episode was the behind the scenes of the draft. And just to see how much they wanted him and the confidence they had in him. And I think look, when you play offensive line at a big conference school like that, you're pushing people around, you're a big guy. It's again, if you're telling me he's worth taking in that spot, look, does it mean that by week 8 of his rookie season that he's going to be, one of the best offensive linemen in the league? But to me, I just think pedigree wise, I would say just trial by fire. He's not embarrassing us. We're 6-2, So to me, it's if you're telling me the guy's been out there on more snaps than not, and we're 6-2, then I think that's pretty good for a rookie offensive lineman in a league like this, going up against these really tough adult men, So I think I will say it's whenever, and it's been a couple times, but the Jags, I will say have more than most teams taken sexy first round picks, and a lot of them did not work out, like Justin Blackman and whatnot. But so, and then you have the years where you get, Fournette and things like that. But a lot of teams you do end up, early round pick. Oh no, but we're taking a lineman, right? There you go, Lenny. So so I always say those years where you take the offensive lineman, I always trust okay, this is it's like when you're eating a meal and you're like, all right, this is obviously the good stuff, but I probably should get my little salad in on the side, or I should, the stuff that, is good for your diet, but okay, it's not what I'm looking forward to. I'm not dreaming about that. No, I'm thinking about the dessert. I'm thinking about the running back. I'm thinking about the wide receiver, whatever. But when you take an offensive lineman that high in the draft, probably over the course of the next 5 years, 10 years, hitting on those picks is going to be important. So I would say, right now it's you don't talk, haven't heard anybody talk about him being, needs to be replaced or is an embarrassment or anything like that. And, I think there's a couple times you've seen him, but to go back to the, hey, when you play a team and you lose, you can still learn something to play him again in the playoffs. This is his first go around going at all these guys and stuff like that. Are some of these guys gonna, look on Sunday, might 1 or 2 of these guys on the Niners line make them look silly once, maybe, but then that he'll remember that, that'll help educate him going forward. This is how you enter the league. You know what I mean? There's not, you don't really see a lot of offensive linemen rookies coming and becoming the bullies of the league right away. It just doesn't happen. It's those guys who end up playing for, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Those are the offensive linemen that really make a dent in the NFL, and the ones that you've got, Kelsey on Philly, and you got that line in general. It's the ones who stick with the same, and they learn the quarterback trusts them, this and that. So I see like, again, the potential and the future, but I wouldn't be able to pretend to tell you like, oh, he's doing this right or doing that right. Like, I'm not John Madden, but in right now it's like, what I'll say is, if a team's saying we need an offensive lineman, and especially you have a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, and you want to make sure you're setting himself up for success, like I trust him. You know what I mean? Because especially where we picked in the draft, I wasn't necessarily like, it's not like when you have that first overall pick and you use it on that lineman, and then it's like, those years where, the guys went first overall or second or third overall, whatever, and you had that sexy, like, whoever picked there, and like, you're watching those guys go out the door and you're taking that. Like where we picked in this draft, I was totally fine with that. And I loved seeing them, calling the other teams, and that you get off the phone and be like, they're going to, Buffalo's going to take the tight end, blah, blah. Like, he knew exactly what they were doing and whatever, and knew how far down we could move to get him and stuff. So, I mean, look, he's a young kid and he's playing probably like the most important but unheralded position in the league. So, so far I'm happy with it so far. 6-2. You can't go. I mean, 6-2. We took an offensive lineman. He's been playing, and we're 6-2. So I can't say anything other than that.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what about
yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm happy with the pick. When we originally made the pick, I wanted to get Joey Porter Jr. Joey Porter Jr. hasn't really done much this season, but like you said, it's rookies. How many players actually make a huge impact on their first year unless they're like a skill position player? But looking back on it now, hindsight's 2020. But I'm happy with the pick because, like you said, I'm like you. I couldn't really pick apart his play, but I know that we don't hear his name a lot.
Yes.
Other than the dude has gone up against some crazy good defensive players, and he's held his own. Has he looked silly maybe a few times? Probably, but he's a rookie, and he's going up against, like you said, grown adult men. And another thing that I really like about it is we let Jawan Taylor go, which I was kind of upset that we let him go. But the way that Jawan Taylor's played for the Chiefs for $80 million, it's
right. And you often hear it's like with the linemen, it's like, again, to talk about being an unheralded position, you very infrequently, I mean, like, they don't get their own segments on Sports Center. You don't talk too much when you go back to a draft. People aren't always like in a redo a draft to talk about, should this lineman have gone before this lineman? Because again, even the experts, but mainly the regular folks, we cannot really discern the difference between how he's playing and say how the other top 5 to 10 offensive linemen players are playing, is like pick wise, to compare them the way we can look at, Trayvon and Hutchinson and say this and that. The way you look back on it is that if we were 2-6, you'd be like, why did they draft Joey Porter Jr.? They should have gotten an offensive lineman. Trevor needs protection. It's like, it's either it's like, there's some jobs you have in life where it's like you don't get compliments. You only find out if you're doing bad at your job, right? Like, nobody just pats you on the back and be like, thanks for doing a good job today. And it's like same thing with offensive linemen and picking offensive linemen. You rarely hear what a great picking him. It's more, why didn't they help their offensive line? Why were they taking their 8th receiver or whatever,
Right.
Dude, you definitely know ball.
I try. I'll admit, it's funny because like, it's one of those things where I love football. I think I know more about it than some people, but like I talk to other people. I'm just like, man, I'm nowhere near the like, top of the line of how much people know about even this team, but let alone the league in general and stuff. And there's so many components to it. College. I mean, I had to, once I got married, now I have kids and stuff. It's like, I just had to almost completely cut out college football. I mean, I follow it from afar, but like, I kind of get introduced to these guys once they start showing up on these draft lists and this and that. And then I'll go, and then I'll see who maybe we're looking to take in, or what, I'll go and I'll watch the packages on YouTube and stuff. And you look at the Kuiper rankings, whatnot, but like, man, it's so hard to keep up with all of it, even just in the NFL, let alone in college. It's just like, there's so much nuance to it. But yeah, I love me some football. I'll tell you one bet that worked out well. It's already, I mean, they haven't sent the money yet, but I took the Josh Allen over sacks total for the year. It was only 7.5, and he's already hit it. So,
nice.
Yeah. Talk about an undervalued guy who I don't think you're ever getting that total again for him, but
No.
It was right around, for as good as he's been for us, he's really been in that kind of 6 to 8 sack range. I think he had one maybe had one that was 11, the really good year. But other than that, so seemed like kind of a valid over under total. But just knowing him and knowing it was a contract year and just knowing like I knew he was going to level up and just I was like, oh, that's easy money. So and then he almost I think he had it by like week 4 or 5. He had like a couple of 2 or 3 sack games in there, and he's great. I mean, I think he's my favorite player. He's just unbelievable. I if we let him go, I will be so mad. That's one. And over the years, you've had to say goodbye to some. I mean, like you get it. Like you were just talking about it, right? At first, oh, we're letting him go, and now you're like, oh, maybe not the worst idea in the world, And sometimes those things like Tyreek Hill, right? Like, look, now the Chiefs have won a Super Bowl since they got rid of Tyreek Hill. So how can you really say, okay, you shouldn't have, but how can you also turn on the Dolphins and not say, how do you not do what you can to keep that guy? He's the best player on the field, maybe the best player in the league. And you guys, I can't even your receivers are like the other day, Rashee Rice has the first touchdown of the game and then he ends with 2 catches. And I was like, But hindsight is 2020. I've watched some of my favorite Jaguars players that let him walk out the door. Calais Campbell, Jalen Ramsey was one of my favorite guys. Then he goes on to win a Super Bowl. And it's tough because the Jags have played that economy ball kind of game, especially over the years where they've kind of got that Tampa Bay Rays attitude of like it's the team. It's not not about the superstars and paying the max. And they very infrequently do. They very infrequently keep that guy around when somebody else is throwing the max at them. So, but there's a couple guys on this team where if they, they do that, I'm going to be really annoyed. It's just like, Josh Allen being one of them.
I think letting people go from the Jaguars, those days are kind of over with. I know that like the way that Jalen left was controversial, but he deserves so much better, dude. And I'm glad that he got a Super Bowl out of it.
Well, they let that whole team just evaporate. I mean, Josh Allen, I think, is the only person still from that team, or at least from that defense. And I remember it was like, everybody was gone. Like they just started letting guys go left and right almost instantly from that team, which was really weird to not just try to keep that thing together. And so obviously I think, yes, different mindset now, obviously different management, but also like they're just different with Trevor. I think having the guy, you feel like, okay, now we have a window of time. Are these, is it worth now? Like, I don't think they looked at Bortles and said like, okay, we got to make sure we keep people here for the next 5 years of this guy who I think is now building houses or something. But with Trevor, I think you look at it and you go, okay, maybe it is worth keeping Josh Allen for as long as we have Trevor on this contract or whatever.
Right.
I just really hope, look, I hope obviously he, that I want the guy to get paid. So if, the Cardinals or some team throws, $200 million at him, by all means, but I would love it to be us because I think he's like because I would say, I'm not naive enough to know. First of all, he shares a name with a more famous person in the league. And also he plays on Jacksonville. I would say he is probably the best relatively unknown player in the league. I don't know that the average NFL player, goes to sleep thinking of Josh Allen on the Jaguars,
Which
and
is
I
so
think,
weird.
No, it is. Well, it's like when because other than that 1 year, when you're doing it on a team that is, coming up, last in the league, whatever, right? Like, it's not like I could have told you the outside rusher for the Lions when they were, same thing, it's like, but now they're 6-2. Now, they start to know their guys, whatever. It's like, but yeah, he's been great. And I think, again, to go back to the Trayvon Walker thing, it's like, he's a great guy for him to learn from, but also they complement each other very well. Like when you go and you look at a game that we play well in, and you look at the numbers, and it's often like, as far as like, you throw in not just the sacks, but the hurries and the this and that, and whatever. And it's like, they tend to both play well together, if you notice that.
Yeah. So we've hit an hour 15. It's been a lot of fun. I just have a few more questions.
Sure.
Do you have any, Cody?
What is your favorite moment about like in your Jags fandom? Like, what is your favorite moment?
Okay, so
you can't use the Chargers game.
Yeah, no, that's the easy one, right? Because that's like the recent one. Favorite moment. Personally for me, I've had just like the only time I've ever been to a game in Jacksonville, It was, I want to say 2011 or so. And I went down and they played the Chargers on Monday night. And we took the Hooters ferry over the water and went to the game. And I think we probably lost the game, but that was cool to just kind of, experience the Duval in person and things like that. Cause I'm again, when you become a transplant fan, like I've seen him play the Jets, I've seen him play the Eagles. But like, I don't get to go to a lot of games in Jacksonville, which, as you mentioned, the fans come out sometimes when the team is playing well or it's a big game, but not all the time, So
Right.
so to be there for a big Monday night game sold out, that was just like a personal moment for me because it was. But to be honest with you, I think we lost. But as far as like look, I mean that win. Those wins in the playoffs well, here's a funny story though. So when my wife and I were picking our wedding date, and we ended up getting married on February 3rd, 2018, and we were comparing dates, and there was one date, the weekend before, weekend after, that our rabbi was not available, but it wasn't the Super Bowl weekend. The weekend that we ended up going with was Super Bowl weekend. So our wedding was on the Saturday of the next day was the Super Bowl. And we're picking this date, of course, like long before, a year before. And my wife is like, "You're not going to want to watch. You're not going to care about the Super Bowl." And I was like, "Sweetie, you think the Jags are going to be in the Super Bowl? Like, come on." I was like, the only reason I would care about it is if the Jags are not going to be in the Super Bowl. And then, of course, that ends up being the 2017 season. And I'm watching these playoff games and we're winning and we beat Buffalo and we beat Pittsburgh. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, if they go, I'm like, what am I going to do if they go to the Super Bowl? And we got married in Miami. And that Super Bowl was I forget where that Super Bowl was, but I was like, and again, like what I tried to ensure her was like, oh, nobody's going to care about the Super Bowl, whatever. And of course, it ends up being Patriots Eagles, which was like a lot of my friends are, either Patriots fans or Eagles fans or just care about the Super Bowl. It ended up being fine because we ended up doing like a brunch at her house the next day. And we, some people stuck around and watched the Super Bowl. But I was like watching those games and watching that game where we almost beat Tom Brady with it was like the weirdest feeling because I'm like, man, do I want to win? But oh my God, what am I going to do if we win? Like, I was like, didn't even want to post. I was thinking, I'm like, how do I post about this without pissing off my wife? Because I ensured her that I was not going to even mention the Super Bowl because like we're already going to be like competing for attention our weekend with the Super Bowl. But like here I am now being like, yes, Jags, like. And like making sure I didn't do that more than I said, like, yes, my wedding the day before, please come. And so those were fun moments too. And like I said, I mean, there haven't been, there was a big win at Pittsburgh. Was it like 2008? Was it or 11 or something? Like that? Yeah, that was a big win. Was it Garrard, right?
Garrard made that run.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
I was a big, I became a fan when Byron Leftwich was a quarterback, but I remember when David Garrard filled in and he was just like quintessential kind of just rando backup guy who overachieved. And I just remember I got his jersey. I was a big David Garrard fan. So yeah, I'll point to that one too. But yeah, like I said, I mean, it's like, sadly not that many to choose from. It's not like we're some franchise. It's but it's been fun. I mean, I've had a lot of great, a lot of favorite players over the years, and I'm just like, again, you find other ways to kind of root for the team, and again, depending on, it might not be the best season, but maybe a big game that we won, or had a big upset win, or like player like Maurice Jones-Drew was like just a great player to root for, and always just being one of the great running backs in the league, and this undersized guy who's just like really fun to watch, and have him be a career Jag was awesome. Mercedes Lewis, I had so two funny things. So I used to do like just interviews, like not before my challenge podcast. I would just interview like random celebrities and other things. And I interviewed Mercedes Lewis, and I had him proclaim me the official Jacksonville Jaguars fan of the Northeast. And that used to play at the end of my old podcast. It said Scott Yager, official Jacksonville Jaguars fan of the Northeast. And then recently I saw Tony Khan, who's the owner's son, at an AEW show, and I had him also make a video of me saying Scott Yager, official Jacksonville Jaguars fan of the Northeast. So there you go. So I am as deputized by the owner, even if I fed him the line, the official Jacksonville Jaguars fan of the Northeast. So those are my favorite moments.
That's awesome, man. That's great.
I went to my so I've been a Jaguars fan. I moved to Jacksonville when I in 1995, and so naturally I was like, oh, they're the closest
That's
team. Let me
great.
go ahead and
Yeah.
love them for the rest of my life and let them determine how happy I am throughout the year.
Do you
But
live there now?
no, actually, I moved to Tennessee, so I live in Northeast Tennessee,
Oh, nice.
like outside of Boone, North Carolina. That's where most people know. But I moved here about 5 years ago. But before that, I pretty much just lived in Jacksonville area my whole life. I'd never gone to a game until last year.
Oh, wow.
My first game was with the Ravens, which, as we all know, was an awesome game.
Mhm.
Although Justin Tucker, even though he was kicking it from like 80 yards, still almost made it. And then my second game I went to was the Chargers game. I actually drove down. It's a 10-hour drive. I drove down, and I got to the game like maybe an hour before it started. And then I tried to get back on the road, but I brought my at the time he was 9, my 9-year-old son, and my mother-in-law insisted that I see her before I left. So,
Yeah.
but then I was back on the road like a couple hours later. But
Nice. That's
no
awesome.
regrets at all on that drive.
That's great. That's cool.
So it was fun, man. The only fandom that I've experienced in the stadium are 2 epic games. So
Right.
That's all I know.
Yeah. You're spoiled. Yeah.
That's all I know. Who is your favorite Jaguar of all time? Not currently on the roster.
Yeah, I guess I gotta go MJD. I just think he, to me, he was like, I'm a sucker for when a team, and he might look. Don't get me wrong, I might be wrong about this. I'm pretty sure he ended his career as a Jaguar. I don't know if he had like a cup of coffee on another team. It's hard to remember.
Yeah, he went to I think he went to the Raiders.
Okay, so he did have okay. So like that's kind of been wiped from my memory completely. He's for the most part a career Jaguar, right? And I just remember him coming into the league and him splitting the carries with Fred Taylor, who was kind of on the way out, but them both having I think 1,000-yard season the same year, I think something close to it. And then he was again as a fantasy nut, he was always kind of a first, second round pick. Really fun to watch, just like it was just like a great person. Also now he's doing TV and things like that. So he probably him. Just he didn't have the best career in Jacksonville because the years he played there were pretty awful. But I was a huge fan of Paul Posluszny out of college.
Oh yeah.
He was like one of my favorite college players back when I was in college. I was still watching college, and I know again my favorite position, especially growing up, was always linebacker. To me, it was like this quintessential middle linebacker, just like team leader, great on Penn State. I think he started in Buffalo, but then eventually came to Jacksonville. And was not there for a good period of that. Like it was not a great. Again, he was there when I went to that game in 2011. So it's like he was not there for I think the best years of Jagsdom, but he is someone I always liked. And now you said nobody currently on the team, but Josh Allen's up there. I've really liked him. Even if this ends up being his last season with us, he's on my short list. So Mercedes Lewis, man, he was somebody who he was on the team forever. And
he's still playing.
It's incredible, man. He's had one of the longest careers, I think. I don't know, in the non-quarterback careers or kicker careers in the history of the league. I think so. He's been there forever. So I got a soft spot for him too.
I think he caught a touchdown earlier this season as well.
That's hilarious. Incredible.
It's crazy. Paul Posluszny, funny story. When I was at the Ravens game, so I was sitting in a not very good. Well, I was sitting with Sam. She's one of the hosts, another one of the hosts for the show. And I think it's on the visitor side. Yeah, we're on the visitor side. And all of a sudden, like I see this dude, like this Jack dude. We all know Puz is. Even though he's retired, he's still probably negative 1% body fat.
Yeah. And
he's just walking down the aisle. And I'm like, dude, that's Posluszny. And he just goes down and sits down. I think he had some family that was sitting down, and it wasn't like it was in the box or club seats. He was just kind of sitting with the fans. And so that was cool to see, kind of like, we know he's not a regular dude, but to see Puz doing a regular dude thing, just kind of sitting with his family. He walked off carrying one of his kids or someone else's kids. I don't know, but that was a pretty cool experience to like see him be like a human. Although seeing him play and the way he acted in front of the camera, you kind of would assume that the guy's just a normal dude once he gets off the field.
Yeah.
Dude, that guy is built like a football player. Like he was just seeing him normally out there or whatever. Like that jawline is crazy.
Yeah, he reminded me of like those guys that like growing up, I was like a big fan of like Zach Thomas and Bill Romanowski and those guys, and he just always reminded me of one of them. It's interesting. It's like some guys who didn't have the most ceremonial exit. Like you're wearing the like I when he was on the Jags, I loved Lenny Fournette. I still even when he went to I rooted for him when he went over to Tampa, and I'm glad he got the Super Bowl. So same thing with Jalen Ramsey. I was a fan of him on the team, and obviously you hate to see him go, but good to see him get the Super Bowl and things like that. And so it's interesting because it's like you end up having these feeling like one of the guys I thought, I was like, this guy's gonna be a quintessential Jags player, and then he ends up getting traded. I believe it was a trade or maybe a cut, but the guy who Laviska Shenault,
he got traded.
I was like, this guy, and he just like, I was like, this guy's gonna be one of my favorite players, and unfortunately, it just never happened, And then he got traded, and now it looks like, I don't think he does much on the Panthers wherever he is, but I was like, oh, this is gonna be one of those guys who like, he might not be one of the, he might be like the third, he might be the little slot guy, or whatever, but he's gonna be like the kind of guy who comes in, makes some big plays and stuff, and so it just never panned out, and that happens a lot sometimes with these guys. Like, you psych yourself up, and then it just doesn't happen. But
I liked how fast D.D. Westbrook was, and I thought
that
would be a quick outside guy.
Yeah, it's another guy. Yeah. I'll be honest. Shouts to my man Josh Scobie too, man. That guy played for a long time. So it's like, it's weird. It's like I said with the Jags, like they go through periods where I think there's not a lot of turnover, and there's like again, like when I became a fan, there was that Stroud and Henderson seemed like they were there forever, and you had Taylor and you had Mojo there forever and things like that. There wasn't that much turnover, and you had like people staying for a while. Then they went through a period where it was like a lot. It felt like a lot of turnover, a lot of like stopping and starting with like Justin Blackmon, like drafted like what was it, 5th overall, whatever, and then it's like okay, go on, whatever. A lot of like people coming in for a cup of coffee, getting let go. You get excited by this guy, he's gone, whatever. And now I feel like hopefully we're in another period where you can start to like get to know the players and actually like, develop a relationship with them and stuff like that, because you kind of started to have that around the team or you thought was going to be around that, AFC title team, but then it just dissipated, so I think that the players I grow an attachment to are the ones that stick around for a long time. And, sadly that doesn't, when you're a team that's starting over so often, it ends up not being too many guys that really stick around from like one team to the next, Josh Allen's that only guy right now. So,
yeah. I've never asked anybody this before, but I was thinking about it today. What would the team look like had Tom Coughlin still in his GM role, had he stayed in his role, and Urban Meyer came on as the coach? How many universes would break apart if that were to happen?
Dude, I don't know, but I'll tell you that Urban Meyer whole thing and fiasco and whatnot, like I was part of my brain was like, this can't possibly go well, just because it almost never goes well when like the flashy college coach comes over to the NFL. It's like almost never, like Nick Saban didn't even succeed. Steve Spurrier didn't succeed. None of these guys ever succeed, except I think Pete Carroll's like kind of the only guy. And like, so there was that, but then also selfishly, we're coming off of some like, a down year or two. And I'm like, well, at least SportsCenter is going to be talking about us. Right. And then ended up being for like the worst reasons ever. It's like he's like, staying in Cincinnati to like dance with some rando and this and that. And it's like, and then I was so pleasantly surprised with the decision to just cut him so swiftly.
Yes.
Because I worried just based on name value, he would drag us down for another 16 games and then they would let him go. So yes, what would have happened? Who knows? I have no idea.
We would have lost the team, dude.
Yeah. I mean, well, here's a question for you guys. You guys follow everything closely. Do you think there's any smoke to the, I know, obviously, I know it doesn't make sense because the other thing you keep hearing is the new stadium, or we're getting a new stadium. But what do you think? Is there any smoke to the fire of like the consistency at which we're playing in the UK, the idea of the Jags becoming, if not eventually, a UK team, somewhat of like a You know, why do you think we play in the UK so much? Do you have any like insight into why we're like every year we're playing out there? Is it just like business relations with the cons and the teams out there? Because I don't know if you know this, but AEW, the wrestling company, did a show at Wembley Stadium in August.
Mm-hmm.
I'd imagine, I don't know if it came about because of their relationships with the stuff out there, and obviously they own the soccer team and things like that. So do you think there's ever a chance that there's more to it than us just going out there once or twice a year?
I think I know that they had come out and said that the equivalent of like one game over there as far as the revenue goes is like several games hosted in Jacksonville. So money wise, especially when Shad Khan first bought the team and the team was just kind of flailing in the wind as far as talent goes and record goes, that was a way for them to recoup some funds and make it fine. And, you know, he's a billionaire, self-made billionaire. So of course, a lot of the moves he's going to make is going to be financially driven. I know that's where a lot of that comes from. And then that's why they keep playing there. Honestly, it's a good relationship. And
you don't think it ever becomes more than just a game or two a year?
No, because and one of the owners had come out and talked about that. They said that for before the NFL can get a team like home in London or any other country, there need the travel. The amount of travel time needs to be like they need some sort of supersonic jet for it to make any sort of sense. And like, so the logistics won't ever let it happen. Now having more than 2 games over there a year, I don't know about that, but I don't think the NFL wants that. Cause like we talked about earlier, the NFL, you know, eyeballs on the TV, right? Jaguars, you know, we have a big fan base, but do we have the fan base of like the Packers? Do we have the fan base of the Giants? You know, the Giants, even though they, you know, suck most of the time, they have New York, right? And so the NFL will never, I don't think the NFL will ever let the Jaguars have more than 2 games just because, again, eyeballs.
I thought it was weird. I thought it was where we played 2, to be honest with you. And then I mean, selfishly, we ended up winning both of them, so it worked out. But I was like, one of these is technically a home game for us. Is like, really? I mean, we're in another country. It has to count as a home game. I was also selfishly, when I saw the schedule and that we were playing Buffalo, I was like, oh, cool. Maybe I'll go see him playing Buffalo. And then I saw that was the London game. But yeah, good stuff.
I know you're going to say something, Cody. What were you going to say about it?
Oh, yeah. It's just basically what you said. It's just business standpoint, whatever. Like, you know, Shad Khan's doing so much here in Jacksonville. Oh, nice.
You have one of these goofy chains?
I don't, man. I want one, though. That's the best one I've seen so far.
Where do you live? Yeah, no, this is it. Yeah. No, I sold my yacht and I bought this chain. Where do you live,
I'm in Jacksonville, just south of Jacksonville a little bit, yeah.
Do you go to a lot of the games?
So I went to the Texans game this year so far.
Nice. So it's your fault.
Right. Yeah, I took my son, so you know I'm sharing the pain.
Well, hey, I got my son here. He lives in New York, and he's a Rangers fan. He's a Yankee fan. He's a Knicks fan. And then I got him wearing the Jaguar stuff and rooting for the Jaguars. So till he's old enough to realize so he's a Jaguars fan. So and my friends are like, why are you doing that to him? I'm like he likes it. He likes being a fan of what I'm a fan of. But I'm sure at some point he'll jump ship. We'll see. But yeah, dude, you got to get out there. Go to the games. I'm hoping to come down. One of the cool things about ChallengeMania is we do a lot of live stuff, and I get to pick when and where we do stuff. So I will often, like this past weekend, we did St. Louis. I picked this weekend because Metallica was in St. Louis, so we did. So I could go see Metallica. But then also when we were down there, we got to do this cool stuff with the St. Louis Blues hockey game. We got to go on the ice in between one of the periods and stuff. So, but I'm dying to do something in Jacksonville around a Jags game. So. I'll let you guys know if we ever make that happen. I'm actually we're doing Nashville in 2 weeks. It's the weekend that they play the Titans, but they're playing them in Jacksonville. So go figure. But at least maybe I'll be there wearing my Jags hat, annoying people. So
right.
Yeah.
They got the comedy club in Jacksonville, right?
Do they have one? I feel like, do they have a comedy club?
Yeah. Well, at least when I lived there, it was literally called the comedy club.
Is it like in a hotel though or something?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
actually.
I looked into it and it was like the little for us. We do comedy clubs, but like the ones that are in like hotels are a little,
sketchy.
I'm trying to find like a bar somewhere that I could just do like a viewing party or something because I do those too. But yeah, we'll get down there eventually. I definitely got
theater.
What is it?
The Florida Theater would be a good place.
Theaters are too big. We like about like 300 seats. That's all we need. So
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. This was awesome. And stay in touch for sure. And let's go Jags. Duval, let's go. Let's take down the Niners.
Yeah, just one last thing.
Sure.
Let people know where they can find you. I put your Twitter handle down here.
Yeah, at Scott Yager on Twitter. I like to tweet about the Jags quite a bit, and then mainly challenge stuff. But if you like the challenge, check out ChallengeMania. If not, feel free to ignore us. I have an Instagram at Scott of Yager because Scott of Yager wasn't available. And if you go to ChallengeMania.live, you can get tickets to our live shows. If you want to meet any of these people, we do like meet and greets afterwards and things like that. So it's a good time.
So you say you'll be in Nashville. Where are you going after Nashville?
We're going to Buffalo the weekend of the 16th, and then we're going to go to the Buffalo Cowboys game on the 17th. So I'll be at that, freezing my butt off outside with the Buff Bills Mafia. But yeah, and then after that, we've got January 6th in Indianapolis. It's the weekend of the Colts Texans game. No, I will not be sticking around for that. And then we're back here in New York on January 21st. We're in Clearwater, Florida on the 27th, the day of the Royal Rumble. So doing a little party that day and then heading over to the Tropicana Field for the Royal Rumble. Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big wrestling guy. So I also schedule our stuff around wrestling. So we're doing Philly WrestleMania weekend as well. So
that's awesome. Is Sting still playing? Or I don't know.
Yeah. He's currently on his retirement tour. So yeah, he's gonna retire. He's gonna retire in March. I think it'll be his last match. So
wow, that's epic. He was
there.
my favorite when I was a kid. I can't believe he's still going.
He's still going. You should watch Wednesdays, TBS on Wednesdays. You can see he's wrestling tomorrow on TBS. If you watch the show owned by the Jacksonville Jaguars, 8 o'clock on TBS, you will watch Sting wrestle in a tag match tomorrow night.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, again, we appreciate you spending some time with us, and it was a lot of fun. And again, everybody go to ChallengeMania.live if you want to go to one of his shows. Sounds like they're going to be all over the place. And again, thanks for joining Jaguars Fan Battle. We are a member of Fan Battle Sports Network, fanbattlesports.com. Until next time, guys, go Jags.
Duval.